Hello, and welcome back to the show. In today's episode, I'm interviewing the one and only Michael Max. Some of you might know Michael. He has been producing and directing and curating the amazing Chinese medicine podcast Qiological for the past 5 years. There was another podcast previous to that, so he's been in this game a long time. Michael is also a Chinese medicine practitioner with a great story about how he got started. I always love to hear people's stories about how they get started. And we have a beautiful conversation about his journey, some of the things that inspire him, some of the things that we notice in clinic, and also what it's like to run a podcast. Small language warning for this one, there's a couple of swears. And if you enjoy the show and you think of someone who would enjoy listening to it too, tell a friend. We'd love your help in spreading the word. Hi, Michael Max.
Karina, how are you?
I'm really good. I want to say your name, both of your names, because it's such a fabulous name.
It's a funny name. It's like a movie star name.
It's a movie star name. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, it's alliterative. I think that helps.
Yes. It feels good to say it in my mouth. Michael
That's
Max.
funny. Michael Max.
Hey, thanks for coming on the show.
My pleasure.
Yeah. I had such a fun time being a guest on your show, and this is fabulous to have you come on and be the person answering the questions rather than the interviewer.
Let's see what it's like.
Yeah. So for those of you listening and or watching, Michael Max is the producer and founder of the very well-known podcast Qiological, which has been, I call it an oasis. It's been
an oasis.
An oasis, yes. Well, for me, I feel like as a Chinese medicine practitioner, when I was going through school, and I know a lot of other people as well, it can feel very overwhelming. And to have a place to go to listen to great conversation and listen to leaders in the field talk about their journey as a practitioner, their challenges, their tips and tricks, their style, it's really, really comforting. And you feel really held even though you're not in the room in that conversation.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm kind of lucky. I spent a lot of time in Seattle, most of my life in Seattle, which is a hotbed of Chinese and East Asian medicine. And so I had all these friends there, and we'd hang out all the time. You know, we'd drink tea and read books and yakety yak, go for walks around Green Lake. We saw each other all the time. We're constantly talking shop, as it were. And then life circumstances changed, and I'm in the American Midwest, not a hotbed of Chinese medicine. and I was kind of lonesome for conversations. And then this podcasting thing came along, and I kind of got a burr under my saddle that, this could be interesting. Let's see where this goes. Hey, I could have conversations with people about medicine. Could kind of get back to that thing that I missed. And it turns out, well, I've been doing it for like 7 years now.
I was going to ask you, how long has the podcast been running? 7 years.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So Qiological, about 5.5. And then I had a previous one called Everyday Acupuncture, which was sort of my entree into it, and retired that one a while back.
So how many interviews do you think you've done over this period of time with practitioners? It's a lot, right?
Funny you should ask. So today, as we record this, it is the 11th of April. On April the 18th, which is just about a week from today, April the 18th, episode 300.
Wow.
I know.
That's a lot of conversations.
It's a lot of conversations. Not bad for an introverted guy.
Yeah, not bad at all. And for sticking it out, I think I heard a statistic recently that a lot of people that start a podcast don't get past the 10th episode and they pack it in.
Well, Yes, that's true. Yes,
let
I've
alone
been
300.
persistent.
Yeah.
Or crazy. I don't know. I mean, podcasting takes a lot of time and effort. It takes a ridiculous amount of time.
Yes.
Every now and then I think I should just put this damn thing on the shelf and go outside and play. Yeah.
So I'd also love to ask you, given that you've been in the seat of asking the questions for 7 years, I'd like to find out a little bit more about you, Michael. How did you get into Chinese medicine? What was your inspiration, or how did the medicine find you? What's your
Yeah.
story?
Okay. I don't know if I would call it an inspiration. I think, like many, many people, it wasn't an inspiration, it was a problem. I was not looking to get into acupuncture. And I mean, I wasn't even looking to get acupuncture, but I had a problem, and a friend of mine suggested I get acupuncture. And I was like, yeah, right. No, that's crazy. I mean, I thought I was an open-minded guy, but I'm like, that's nuts. Why would I do that? And he badgered me for a while. And I finally thought, fine, I'm going to get acupuncture. It's not going to help. You'll shut up. We can go drink beer. Life will be good. Um, so I got acupuncture, went to a local school, and it changed things. Didn't change the problem I had, but I was not the same after that first treatment. It's like, whoa, what was that? That's weird. You know? Get that space, that real settled, like you remember something that you'd forgotten, that kind of feeling.
Mm.
And I remember the receptionist asking if I wanted to come back. And I said, yes, I would. I just used acupuncture for my own health care. It was helping. It's changing all kinds of things. I was sleeping better, digesting better, wasn't as irritable as my woody self usually is. Eventually, my problem got better, and I got curious. So I just, I started reading up on it, but, I just paid off a master's degree that I never used, and I had a good job in high tech, and, a nice Acura Integro is a really cool car, 5-speed, house, retirement, all the goodies you get when you're working in high tech in the early 90s in America. Had a good life. So I wasn't looking to change it, but I got interested in this acupuncture thing. I just kept reading about it, and like the more I read, curiouser it became. And then there came a certain point where I don't know, something shifted. I got into high tech at a time when you didn't need any high tech skills to do high tech. All you had to do was be willing to see how a computer worked and see if you could figure it out. And I figured that out. So it was a really fun industry in the like mid 80s and into like, the mid 90s. It was very wild, wild west. You didn't need certifications. You just need a little chutzpah. People saying, hey, can you make XYZ? And the answer was, sure, I can. Let me go figure out how to make XYZ. And I think the industry was beginning to change and become more proceduralized and, big businessy in many ways. And I started to lose interest in it. Not to mention, I was in my early 30s, and there were kids coming into the high tech at that point. Kids, people in their early 20s, seemed like kids to me at the time. And it's like they already had forgotten more than I thought I was ever going to learn. It's like, oh my God, I don't know if I can keep doing this unless I get into the management side, and I am not management material. So this little idea in the back of my mind said, what about acupuncture?
Mm.
I'm like, acupuncture? No, I do not want to go back to school,
Mm.
and I don't even like being around sick people. But it just kind of like kept knocking, quietly knocking. And at one point, I was talking with actually the first person who ever put an acupuncture needle in me. I was talking to her saying, I'm thinking, I don't know, school, God, what if I get in and I don't like it? She says, look, you can just quit. Why don't you go to school for 6 months? You'll either fall in love with it, and then you've got a great career, or you won't. And all you've done is learn more about something you're interested in. You can't lose. And I thought,
Mm.
oh, it's not a bad idea. So now here we are today.
Here we are today.
Here we are today. I
Yeah.
didn't expect it. It's unexpected. Very surprising to me. And, one of the things was, when I was younger, I didn't have much money. I thought being poor and kind of not being in the economic system was a virtuous thing. And I found out that was not true. It makes your life really damn hard. It's not
Mm.
so good. So I had this great high-tech job. Like, why would I screw that up? So before I did that acupuncture school thing, I first reached out to some acupuncturists. Now, we didn't have Google in those days. We had the yellow pages. You know what yellow
Yeah.
pages are? You familiar with yellow
Yeah.
pages? Yeah?
Ancient.
Okay. So I opened up the yellow pages and I at random, like throwing the I Ching, at random, I called some acupuncturists. And I said, hey, I'm thinking about going to acupuncture school. Can I come and talk to you? I want to see what it's like. I was not about to go invest time and money and effort in something that might not pan out. So I went and talked to like 3 or 4 different acupuncturists. And I happened to have hit 3 or 4 acupuncturists that were doing pretty good. So I went in, sat down. I was like, what do you like about your job? What do you not like about your job? How much money you make? What kind of car do you drive? What year is it?
Mm.
I was very nosy. I wanted to make sure that I could make a good middle-class living, or I wasn't going to do it.
Mm.
And all the people I met, they were making an okay living. It's like, oh, okay, it's doable. All right. Check.
Tick. Proceed.
Tick, proceed. All right. Yeah.
Mm.
So that was it.
Yeah. I wonder if, even if you had have chatted to a couple of acupuncturists that weren't doing so well, if the knocking on the door of
I don't think so.
acupuncture,
Nope. Nope.
that would have been a deal breaker for you.
That would have been a deal breaker. Nope. I'm not going to go spend money and time
Mm.
only so I can make half as much money as I'm making now. That's stupid. I wasn't going to do that. I had a fine job. I mean, I didn't have to quit it. I was a little not disgruntled. And the industry was changing. I was uncomfortable. Maybe I just needed to change the job and do a different job. I could have just done some sort of lateral move in the industry. It might have been great. This was right before the internet. I got out right before the internet. That was not great timing.
Yeah.
I could have stayed in another 5 or 7 years and had a payday, but I didn't. So yeah, no, being able to make a living. I'm in my mid-30s at this point. I'm not fucking around.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
There are a couple of things in there that you said that I really loved. And well, one of them was can you make XYZ? And I thought, that's a really good hook for the curiosity needed in acupuncture, because it's such a fluid art. It's very hard to kind of pin it down. And the other thing that I love about what you said is that you went to acupuncture because you had a problem, but that's not the thing that started to shift first. There were all these other things that you started to notice that changed in your health, and you went, whoa, I'm sleeping better, my digestion's getting better. And I feel like that's such a common thing for people. They have this expectation that the acupuncture is just going to fix their shoulder, but they get all these other benefits of feeling better and healthier as a person, and they had no idea. And that's one of my favorite things. It's so good.
Yeah. I find it very interesting, and it, makes me think about medicine in general. Generally the promise that's being made with all the marketing around medicine, regardless of what kind of medicine it is. The promise is, you got a problem, come on in, we're going to help you with that problem. Why else would you go? Why else would you spend the money or the time? And conventional medicine is pretty good at taking care of symptoms in a lot of cases, and you can, quote, get rid of the problem. But our medicine really works kind of from the inside out, I want to say. Not to say that you might not be able to get rid of knee pain like that, because sometimes you can, but often it is more complicated.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
And it does take some coaxing and some educating for the clients, because we are so bombarded with marketing for instant fixes that to help someone understand the process means this might take a little bit longer than you're anticipating, because you've been conditioned to think that there are silver bullets for things. But we're actually rebuilding this from a foundational level. And some people don't have the patience for that.
Well, a lot of people don't. And here's the thing. I remember early on hearing this thing about, well, they're going to need 10 or 12 treatments. No one is sticking around for 10 or 12 treatments and maybe it'll get better. I don't know where we get that idea. It's a ridiculous idea. Most people in the modern world, now it doesn't have to be gone in 3 treatments, but something has to shift. Something has to be different. Or I think patients, rightly so, aren't going to get on board. It's like, okay, I did 3 treatments. I spent hundreds of dollars already. Nothing. I mean, unless you can point to something being different. Now, again, it could be something like, my case, where people say, almost lost my train of thought there, where the symptom didn't change right away. The problems I had didn't change right away, but there were these other things, and I happened to notice it. But here's the thing. A lot of people are not that in touch with their bodies or their mind or their experience, for that matter, because their experience is all in here, right? They're so, right?
If you're listening, Michael just held up his phone and
I just held up my phone and glazed my eyes over. And so I think telling people like the story of Chinese medicine, how it's supposed to work and all that, blah, 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 not helpful at all. Really, maybe unproductive. What is helpful is, as we notice things changing in people, we have to kind of tease that out. We have to gently bring it to their attention in a way that they think they thought of it.
100%. Yeah. I have
then
a
they
little
start,
process.
then they get online with it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because the focus is sometimes on one thing, and until you're asking the right questions about feedback, then they have little light bulb moments. So I do a little review practice in my treatment plan with people, where I just get them to fill out a short review form a couple of sessions in, to ask them questions about, hey, are we still working on the thing that we came in for to start?
Oh, that's great. I love it.
Yeah. Has something new turned up, or how much of that original thing do you feel like has changed? And just giving them that little window of 5 to 10 minutes to reflect often brings huge awareness to them, but also to me, because the things that I'm witnessing that are changing, that's not exactly what they're witnessing, but they might have witnessed a remarkable change. And often it's about their belief of their own health, or their outlook, or their a change in state, a change in emotional state or a mental state. And then that enthusiasm comes into the next set of sessions if we need more. And then it's, there's just so much more, I don't know, there's so much more chi and so much more receptivity to the medicine rather than, it's quite confronting to just say to somebody, first up, you're about to make a massive investment in me, money-wise, time-wise, and it's going to take all these sessions and it's going to cost you all this much money, but you've got no idea if you can trust what I'm saying. Of course, there's going to be a sense of, that's a huge risk. I don't know about that. I'm hesitant.
It's already weird.
It's already weird.
It's already weird. Now you're asking for thousands of dollars? Wait a minute. Like, show me the money. I mean, like, show me some results.
Show me some change.
Show me some change.
And I think about one of my mentors in Melbourne, Kirsten Wolf, who runs a very successful fertility clinic. She's an incredible practitioner, business owner, and she does a lot for the budding Chinese medicine community in Melbourne and so much more. I'm not giving her half the credit that she deserves. And she talks about this with her clients because people are coming to her for fertility. And she said, Karina, when you're working in other spaces, people can leave their first session and notice a therapeutic change. And then that can help them feel like, yeah, this is worth me continuing. But she said in fertility, there's a whole different sort of scenario that you're helping to support them with because they don't know how much is changing because it's a time game, you know, getting the menstrual cycle to change or helping to improve fertility for the men and the women. So there's a lot of leaning into the unknown there, and she handles it really well. She's amazing.
There is a lot of leaning into the unknown. That is, I think we become masters of uncertainty if we do this long enough. And it's not a bad skill to have. Useful in all kinds of ways. But I would think even with fertility, maybe especially with fertility, people are going to see all kinds of changes along the way, especially if the period is not working well. First thing they're going to notice is the period's different.
And I guess they will, but it might take 3 or 4 weeks to notice that versus...
It might take 3 or 4 weeks.
One session.
If they've had a bad period for decades, and in 3 or 4 weeks there's a change, okay, that's pretty quick.
Yeah, when you frame it like that.
Well, and like you were saying, how we frame it is not to be manipulative, but to be helpful. To help people frame it. So I've got I got one right here. I've got a little card that I give people after their first acupuncture treatment. And on the back, it says, what can I expect from acupuncture? Especially new people. All right. What can I expect from acupuncture? They don't know what to expect. It's weird. And one of the things that I describe on here is I ask them to be attentive to how things might be different. And it's tricky to be attentive to things that are not present in our awareness. Very, very difficult. It took me years of frustration when people would come in and I'd say, how's it been? And they'd say, well, it might be a little better, maybe the same, maybe a little better, maybe a little better, about the same, maybe better, something like that, right?
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about. And all y'all's listening know what I'm talking about. To try to be nice. When people say that, they mean one of two things. Absolutely nothing has changed. I'm being nice. Or everything has changed and I don't even notice that it's changed. So maybe the guy who's been waking up 3 times a night to pee. How's it going? Yeah, you know, okay, about the same. Maybe better. So he's still getting up 3 times a night to pee, and he's like, nah, I haven't been doing that. I'm looking at the top of his form, right? Urinary frequency. And he's waking up like 0 to 1 times a night now. Didn't even notice it. Right? Or even people with pain, like back pain. knee pain. How you doing? About the same. So you still can't, stand for more than 5 minutes and chop vegetables. They're like, no, I have no trouble chopping vegetables. They forget. Sometimes there's a kind of amnesia that goes with a problem going away, and people don't notice that it's gone away. So there's that. But beyond that, like I was saying, like we've been talking about, there's those changes that happen and they might be subtle, profound, but subtle. And so asking people to pay attention to what's not there. Now, how do you ask someone to pay attention to what's not there? That's super hard. So what this says is, all right, as you're hanging out, between now and the next time I see you, just living your life, if you have a moment where you go, that's weird. Strange. Just this like feeling of what? Pause, stop, unpack it. What's weird? Because sometimes it is that sense of ease where they used to have discomfort. And all they notice is like, oh, that something's weird. They don't realize that they feel better.
Yeah.
So it helps to ask people to be a little attentive, not to like try to change their mind or talk them into feeling better, but just see if they can be aware.
And it's a beautiful skill of a practitioner to hear a sentence like, oh, a little better, maybe it's the same, and to not just leave it. I mean, you can leave it alone, but if you asked a follow-up question, maybe with some detail, when the client is able to articulate, oh, actually, now that you're shining a bit of a spotlight on that question, maybe I'm going to have a realization right here. And that's a very potent moment, I think.
Yes, I think so too. Another one, and this took a long time. I think everything that a client says, we have to follow up. So when they come back in, they go, I'm doing great. It's terrific. You don't just go check. Ooh, I got this down, don't do that. It's like, oh, you're better. Okay, great. How do you know you're better? How do you know you're better? What's different? I ask people to go into detail on that, partly because it does help get them on board with, wow, this stuff works. But more importantly, for me as a practitioner, so that I can understand in what way did this treatment be useful to them. Because good or better is not helpful. We think it's helpful, and our ego loves it. Ooh, I'm a smart doctor. Look at me. They're better. Yay. But that's not useful.
And their version of better, or what they are calling better, you have no idea. That's why I get them to fill out the little form. We have no idea. So I remember I once had a patient that I was supporting with a lot of gynecological issues, and she wrote on the form after maybe 4 or 6 sessions that there'd been a 1,000% improvement. And I was like, wow, I have to ask what this means. Wow. Because there's still a lot of symptoms there and the period is still really painful. I want to know what this 1,000% represents to you. And when we unpacked it together, it was more about the fact that she felt that she was finally working with someone who was listening to her, that she felt safe with, that she was starting to change her own relationship with herself. And that was huge for her. But that didn't necessarily mean that the condition that she was getting support with had changed from an objective place. And that's when I realized, this is a very, very good practice to put into how I relate to my clients. So they have a moment to actually reflect on their own course of changes, and then I can ask questions about it and be let in. That's really good.
Yeah, it's the great thing about practicing for a while is you get to make a lot of mistakes and assumptions, and get a chance to learn from it. But yeah, I love that 1,000% better. Like, okay, what is that? What happened? Oh, I feel connected to someone who might help me.
Yeah, that was huge.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, it's so easy to, to dream in our own idea of what we think a patient needs or what they want or what's going to be right for them. And I just feel like I have to be on guard about that all the time. Not
Mm.
make it about me. It's got to be about them.
That's the crux of it right there, I think. That, like, the more that you can get out of the room, I think, aside from the fact that you are administering skills,
Hmm.
but any sense of you having the desired outcome of what should happen,
Mm.
that's what I'm
Yes.
working on. Yeah.
Yeah, me too. So I had a great conversation with Damo Mitchell about this. It was back in early February. And are you familiar with Damo?
No,
Have you
I'm
watched his
not.
stuff
Tell
or
me.
anything? Oh, he's an
No.
interesting cat. He's from England. I think he's in Bali now. He does a lot of Neigong and Qigong, and he's done a lot of martial arts. Interesting guy, and just very down to earth. A lot of Taoist stuff, but very down to earth and funny. It's funny as hell, actually. And so we were talking about this very thing, that we need to be in the room, we need to be present, we need to do the very best work that we can do, but not be attached to the results of the work. Doesn't mean not caring. It just
Mm.
means not being as attached. And he had this great word. He says, yes, well, you need to bring a little bit of indifference to the outcome. Isn't that great?
That's great.
Bring a little indifference to the outcome. Doesn't mean you don't care. Doesn't mean you don't try. Just not be so attached to the outcome. See what shows up. Follow that. A little indifference.
Yeah. I think it helps you stay neutral.
Mm,
I've had a lot of moments in clinic where you're giving someone a treatment and they have a reaction to what you're doing. And I've noticed that a big emotion comes up around whether I'm doing it right or performing well. And it's a huge internal change because I'm very invested in the patient being comfortable, or that they leave feeling better. So that indifference is also just watch how you're reacting, because when you're in that space, you need to be as neutral as possible, which I think is why it's super important to have practices that you're doing outside of the clinic room, whether it's Taoist practices or meditation or some kind of self-cultivation, so that you're really aware of when you are getting involved,
hmm
your agenda, your biases, what you want to happen starts to show
Yes, the
up.
desire for my patients to get better. It's so troublesome.
It's troublesome. Yes, it's troublesome. Mm.
Mm.
But then when they do, it's also like, oh, well, that's great. I don't mind what happens. Who said
I
that? Some great sage
don't
said that.
mind what happens. Yeah, I don't know
I
who
don't mind
said
what
that.
happens.
But yeah, I don't mind what happens. Who did say that? Someone said
It's
that.
a
I've heard
classic.
that.
It's a
Yeah.
classic. Maybe it's the sage that wrote, I am that. Do you know that text? I am that.
Uh,
Indian
I
sage.
don't know.
Someone will
Yeah.
know. Someone who's listening will know.
Somebody will know. Yeah.
I think the sentence is, I'll tell you my secret. I don't mind what happens.
Oh, God, that's great. I don't mind what happens. I'm writing that down. Oh,
Awesome.
God, that's perfect. Yeah. Now there's some cultivation for you, huh?
Mm-hmm. So when you do mind what happens, oh, what happens to you?
Yeah. Well, you get all wound up.
Get all wound up.
Now the focus is on me, the practitioner, instead of on the patient. And it happens. I mean, look, we're human. It's a natural part of just relating to other humans. But like anything, be mindful of it. Your word neutral, I think, is fantastic. Can I be in that neutral space? Could I take somebody berating me or somebody praising me and not mind either one? I mean, have that not move me emotionally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's an extraordinary place to be. I
Yes.
can't say
Well,
I'm there.
I have very tiny moments where I might be there and then, something else comes along and, off to the races you go. But yes, practice, coming back. I had a meditation teacher once say that meditation is not that quiet, equanimous sense of floating and being present. Meditation is the moment when you realize you have strayed and you come back. That's the moment of meditation. You come back. So, we can do this in practice all the time. Something triggers us or upsets us or makes us super happy for that matter. Okay. Just bring it back to neutral.
Yeah, it's a daily practice, moment to moment.
Mm.
And when you were talking before about the two different ways that clients can respond with, I feel a little bit better, maybe it's the same, where it's, I don't want to upset my practitioner because I want to say the right things. I want them to feel comfortable, or actually I really have no awareness of myself enough to tell you what's changed because I'm not that connected. That practice that you just talked about, coming back. You build so much awareness because you realize, whoa, all day, I am either getting caught up in a thought that's come through my head and I've hooked into it and I'm along for a ride, or I'm releasing my talons from that thought and I'm returning. They're big days. Constant work. Yes. And then sometimes you're like, I'm just gonna get dragged around for a little while because I don't know if I've got the energy to be mindful of this time and time again. And then sometimes it feels really easeful and you think, oh yeah, I'm getting somewhere with this.
Yes. For sure. There's those days where I feel like, my goal is to do no harm. Sometimes you're just off. I don't know why. Sometimes you're really on, but yeah, practice.
Yeah. Hey, so I'm curious, when you went to school and your first acupuncturist gave you an awesome reframe, hey, just try it for 6 months, you'll either love it or you'll quit. And you went, oh, that's a good way to look at it. You obviously got to the 6-month mark and you fell in love with it.
I wouldn't say I was in love with it at that point.
Okay. What happened? Where'd you go?
I was interested in it. It had my attention. I wouldn't say I loved it at that point. I was curious about it. And I felt like I was beginning to get some momentum with wrapping my head around all this circular thinking. But it took a while. I almost washed out like in the first maybe 2 months. I was in a study group with some friends, some other students, and we're going over herbs, and I just wasn't getting it. It was just too much. I was having a meltdown. Like, I'm never going to get it. Why am I doing this? I got a nice job. Like, what the fuck am I doing this for? It seems so impossible. And one of my classmates, fellow Missourian, by the way, he kind of calms me down somehow. I don't remember what he said, but he kind of calmed me down. And then he pulls out a Post-it note. We had these little tiny Post-it notes for like taking notes and putting them on the pages. And he wrote on that Post-it note, things take time. Slapped it on my book. And I was like, much time. But I don't know. There was something about that recognition that, it really changed things for me. That it can take seasons. It could take beyond seasons. It can take years. It could take portions of a life. Some things really take time. And that's, I don't know how or why that just settled my heart in that moment. but it did. And it really helped. I actually took that and pasted it on the wall in my study. At the end of acupuncture school, you could barely read the words. They were still there, but they were so faint after 3 years of sunshine, landing on them. Still said very faintly, things take time. That kind of changed for me. And so I got to that 6-month mark. It's like, I'm still in it.
So he kind of gave you a mantra.
Kind of gave me a mantra. Yeah. Yeah. As I look back, that was 25 years ago. That was over 25 years ago. Yeah, that was one of those odd, pivotal moments that I can see in retrospect. I couldn't see it then. Something changed, but it's only in looking back. Yeah. Yeah, it was like a mantra. It's been very helpful to me.
Yeah. And well done for getting through, because the study is a really challenging part of this life, the acupuncture study. And how did you move forward after that? Did you set up your own practice? Did you?
Oh, hell yes.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
This is so I graduated in 1998. You want to practice acupuncture, you're building your own damn practice. There's no hospitals that have, it's even in places like Seattle. No, you got to build your own practice. But see, I knew this from the get-go. I knew this before I went to school, because I interviewed those people that said, here's how it goes. You got to build your practice. And I've been self-employed much of my life anyway. So that it's like, okay, build another business. Okay, I can do that. So it was not an obstacle for me. It was not a bug, it was a feature. I don't want to work for people anyway. I don't want to have a manager telling me this and that and set me a schedule. No. Punch a clock? No. No. I'll work stupid hours for myself, but I'm not punching someone else's damn clock.
Yeah, it never really stops, does it? There's always something to do.
There's always something to do.
Especially if you're also, producing all this phenomenal free content for the world. There's always something to do.
It's not free. I'm going to say here right now, it's not free. Somebody pays for it.
Okay.
And here's why. In this world, if you look at nature, nothing is free. Everything is exchanged. That's the definition of health and flowing qi. Smooth, proper, titrated, appropriate exchange. So the internet has a whole business model that gives you the feeling of free. Facebook's a great example. Facebook feels free. Facebook ain't free. Facebook is selling your ass to the highest bidder. So there is no such thing as free. Somebody somewhere is making sure it happens. But beyond that, it's about exchange. So you're either recognizing what you're being given and maybe be grateful or help in that exchange in some way. We see this in our clinics all the time, right? People that come in and it's like, well, can I get this for half price? Well, that exchange isn't going to work. Can I get it cheaper? There has to be, and I get this from Chinese medicine. Chinese medicine has helped me to better understand business and better understand my relationship with money. There has to be appropriate flow and exchange.
Well, thank you for clearing that up. Nothing's for free.
Nothing's for free. So, you listen to the podcast, you listen to Qiological, and it's because of the generosity of the sponsors who have valuable things for our profession. but it's due to their generosity and their desire to, have messages out. Happy to get it out there to folks because they got good stuff. It's all about exchange.
Mm.
So if you're enjoying Qiological and you go, this is a great free resource, like maybe consider the sponsors because they make it possible.
Mm. Yeah, thanks for the reminder.
Yeah.
It's really true what you said. I'm lucky I've never actually had anyone ask me if they can have treatments for cheaper. But when I was supervising at the student clinic, the school that I went to employed me for the next year to be a tutor in the student clinic, which was great. And
it was
being
wonderful.
a student, I loved it. I loved that experience. But because if you come in for a treatment in the public school clinic, it's incredibly affordable.
Yes.
But I would notice that because it was so cheap, we would get people not showing up, cancelling, and because they didn't value it, because they weren't.
There you go.
They weren't being asked to cough up more money for it, so that it's kind of throwaway. And my opinion is that if the exchange isn't right, the medicine doesn't really work.
Yeah, so I want to put a pin in something else that I think this is about, what we're talking about, because like, what is it that we're exchanging? We're exchanging value.
Mm.
We're exchanging value. And so, and I've heard business people talk about it this way. If you're selling, let's say something, a widget, whatever, $200, but that widget has like $400 worth of value, man, what a great price for that widget. $200. So very often people conflate price with value. So, that's expensive. Well, expensive compared to what? I think it's very important to dig down a little bit. What's the value that we're talking about here? What's the value to somebody who is in their late 60s, who's got troublesome knees? What's the value to them to be able to get on the floor and play with their grandchildren and then pick the grandchildren up from the floor? Right? If you're 30, 40 years old, that's not a problem. You don't even think about it. People in their late 60s think about it. That's why they come in to see us. Oh, are these treatments expensive? I get to play with my grandchildren on the floor. Right? Value.
Yeah. Sometimes I think about the difference between the cost of something and the investment in something, and it helps me make better decisions around what I'm doing. For example, doing a lot of continued professional development in this industry, you can spend a lot of money, but when you know that you're making an extraordinary investment into what that knowledge is going to do for you as a practitioner, it completely changes the clank or the nervousness you have around forking out the cash, because it doesn't. To me, the difference is if you're just going to pay for something and it's a cost, the value ends with the exchange one for one. Whereas if I'm investing in an extraordinary teacher and doing a program with them, I know that that's going to better my whole career. And so my relationship to spending the money is completely different. And I think that can happen for our clients too, when they realize that they're investing in their whole life getting better potentially, or the thing that they dearly miss, which might be their grandchildren, or just participating in society again because they can leave the house and they're not nervous around having vertigo at any time or migraines. That's extraordinary. And maybe that's why people write down, I've had a 1000% improvement. You've got no idea what this has done to shift something for them. And that's value.
Yes. Yeah. I find it helps to bring it back to value.
Value. Absolutely. Yeah. And so do you currently practice from home, or did you build a practice outside of your home? What's your current day setup?
Change. So when I first got out of school, I had a friend who was practicing out of her home, and I thought, So unprofessional. Why would you do that? That's horrible. I would never practice out of my home. And then about 6, 7 years ago, we were living in a really nice place, and the landlord decided to sell it. And I thought, well, it's a nice place, but changes in the air. Like, what are the other options? And one of the thoughts that came through my head was, well, we could go buy a house, and if the house would support a practice, I'll just get rid of the clinic, work out of the home. It's like, Michael Max, you said that was unprofessional. And I realized that after 18 years, if I wasn't professional by now, I was never going to be a professional. That for me, because I was so uncomfortable in the beginning about, do I know this? And will people, see it as real? And do I see me as real? And am I credible? I needed an office. I needed all that, medical clinic trappings for me to feel comfortable. And a few years ago, I realized I don't need that anymore. I would like my life to be a little more simple. And again, I thought if I could find a house, and if that house had a separate entrance and a separate bathroom, and I could have like business and home life separate, that I would try to buy that house. And I did try to buy that house, and I succeeded. So I've been working out of my home office for the past, I think, 7 years now. Commute is fantastic.
Oh, yeah, I hear you.
So, yeah, the wonderful thing about having a practice and about being self-employed is you can make it whatever you want. You can make it a very medically thing. You can make it a non-medically thing. It's, the world's your oyster in a sense. You get to create whatever you want. It's a big canvas. Paint whatever you want.
Yeah, it's fantastic. You can set your own hours. You can set your own T's and C's. You can create it your way. It's beautiful, beautiful flexibility. I'm in a similar position. I treat out of home. A home that I rent, and I love it. I like the streamlined feel of everything is in the one place. And when you finish late at night, I often see clients until 8 p.m. at night, and they say, but it's so late. And I say, but I'm already at home. I don't have to go anywhere. As soon as you leave, I'm home already.
Short commute.
It's fine.
There you go.
I don't mind. Short commute.
Short commute.
Yeah. Couldn't get any shorter.
Yeah.
Oh, fabulous. Well, I've noticed as well, you're a man of beautiful words and musings. I really enjoy at the start of the episodes that you'll share some things that you are contemplating, and you'll share, just some of your thoughts around the medicine. And I love that you do that, and I love that you have such a inquisitive mind, and that you're so open to the things that you don't understand. And I feel like at the beginning of the episodes, you open up so much curiosity for thought, rather than it having to always be like, sometimes I think in Chinese medicine, it can feel like I understand it, I don't understand it. And there's no room for that gray area of just enjoy being in the not knowing, because you'll never really fully know. And I wonder what you're musing on at the moment. Is there anything particular that you've been contemplating?
Well, I mean, you hear it every week on the podcast. That's
Yeah.
That's actually my writing practice. I started writing when I moved to Taiwan. So that was in 2001. I just started writing. I picked up and moved my life to Taiwan to go learn Chinese, and got there, and it was one of those very big, like, what the fuck have I done with my life sort of moments. It was so incredibly foreign. And I'd studied a little Chinese when I was at acupuncture school. They had us learn to read a little Chinese. I could read a little medical Chinese. It was very focused because learning to read medical Chinese actually isn't that difficult because it's a very narrow vocabulary. But I learned to do that in simplified characters, and then I had taken a little language class for like 6 months before I went to Taiwan from a Beijinger. So I get to Taiwan, I cannot understand a single word, and I can't read anything because they have traditional characters. And the world is so weird, going from Seattle to Taipei. And I found myself at times in the morning, I would like write because I just had to try to make sense of my world. And it just became kind of a practice. So I still do that. And what you hear on the podcast is the things that catch my interest. So I'll usually, I mean, it just could be something out in the environment. Like right now, it's the Japanese maple tree that in the past week went from buds that I thought were never going to open to, I'm not kidding you, overnight, half-inch long. And the next day, there's like, the little leaves are out there. It's just spring is exploding here. So it could be something like that. And I'll write about that. Or often it will be something that somebody said in clinic. My patients say the most amazing things. And I'll just grab a snippet, or I'll grab a sentence, or I'll just grab the feeling, or just grab the whatever, and then kind of unpack that. And then y'all get to hear that on the podcast. I'm always nervous as a cat when I publish that stuff because it's a little bit personal. And I don't know if people are even listening or like it or what, but
I love it.
You love it. What do you love about it?
I love that it is so personal, and I come from a creative arts background, so I love the way that it reminds me that being an acupuncturist is really very artful, and it is an art form, and artists ask questions, and artists find inspiration about the medicine from nature. And I know that a lot of the time you are reflecting on things that you see in the external environment and how that then spurs a question. And I've done a lot of, I come from a dance background, so we used to do a lot of choreography from prose or creative writing. So we would just write whatever, and then you would extract from the words a statement or a phrase, and then you would turn that into movement, and then that might begin the whole process of creating a full, complete work of movement and dance. So I like that as a process. But
That's
I also
so interesting. I do exactly the opposite.
Uh-huh.
I catch something that's moving, be it words or nature or this or that, and then I see what that has to say in words. I understand what you're saying. I do the mirror side of it.
Well, I guess it can go either way, can't it? It's beautiful like that.
Yes, it can. It can go either way.
And the other thing I love about you doing that at the start of your show is that it reminds the listeners that there's always going to be questions, and that it's not the aim of being a practitioner to close the book and go, all right, I know everything now. I'm full to the brim. I'm confident that there's nothing new to learn. There's no new questions to ask. And to keep being open to being surprised about the medicine, rather than launching straight into information and lectures about content, which is quite heavy sometimes.
When I was a kid, I remember my older relatives saying, you blink your eyes and 50 years goes by. And I think it's true. For me, if there's not some kind of joy and interest and something that tickles a sense of inquisitiveness, I just don't bother with it. I had all kinds of jobs when I was younger that I did for a couple of weeks, and it was just like, yeah, no, this is empty of any meaning other than making some money. And I could never stick with that kind of thing. So maybe this comes back in a way to the question that you asked me about after 6 months of acupuncture school. Did I love it? The answer was no, I didn't love it, but I was damn curious about it. You know, it kind of had its hooks into me at that point. It's like there's a way of looking and thinking and beyond thinking, which I can do pretty good, perceiving and being, which I don't do so well. Being is harder. Right? It's that neutral that we're talking about in clinic. And yeah, it kind of had its hooks into me that way. Love came later.
I'm glad to hear that. And I feel like
it's not love at first sight.
It's not love at first sight. I was going to say that feels like a beautiful idea to, close on in this episode. A connection to joy. Life moves fast. How can we, how do we find our joy in the things that we're doing? And if the joy isn't there, maybe change things up a little. Life is too short to not be in a state of joy.
Yeah, and it's accomplice inquisitiveness.
Yeah, curiosity and joy.
Yeah. The things that I remember, like just from being a little kid, and they try to beat that out of you in school. You're not supposed to write like this. You got to write like that. You got to sit still. All these things that you got to do as opposed to like discover. Yeah, I think that's the other piece too. Something about that process of discovery, which our patients give us the opportunity for every time they walk in the door. It's a journey. It's a voyage of discovery.
It's a voyage of discovery for everyone involved.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Wow. Thank you so much, Michael, for this great conversation that we've had today. It's been such a pleasure.
Been a real enjoyable hour spent with you as well. Thanks so much for inviting me on.
Oh, you're so welcome. I'll look forward to hearing the next musings on the show. And thank you so much, everybody, for listening and connecting with us today. See you next time.